Today's session, well, I want to thank those that joined our previous sessions that we had, and this specific one will focus on Osprey Lite, and also just again go over the HMI. I think it was briefly covered in the previous session that we had, but we have had quite a lot of questions and queries with regards to the HMI and how to use it to set up and configure the instrument. So we'll also just briefly go through that in today's session. I think we have a bit more time in today's one as well. So as the Bochel mentioned, please, if you have questions, just send it in the chat and we'll cover it in the end of today's session so that we can just get through it and then we cover all the questions. All right, I just want to share my screen with you. The Bochel, can I just ask you to please take note of the questions, or if you maybe have the answer already, you can give it in the chat box. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So the Bochel, can you just confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right, thank you. So as I mentioned already, we will be doing Osprey Lite, covering Osprey Lite and then the HMI. So the agenda will be do a quick introduction on what is Osprey Lite and covering some of the main functionality of Osprey Lite. Then we'll do an introduction on the HMI, the main functionality of the HMI, and then at the end of the session, go through all of those functionalities and functions for both Osprey Lite and the HMI as well. So to start with, the Osprey Lite. So Osprey Lite is a free offline power quality monitoring and management system. It is, well, it's supported, or it supports Impedo Dio, the VECTO 2 and the VECTO 3. So all of the latest devices, you'll be able to connect to it via Osprey Lite. You can also get the latest version of Osprey Lite on our website, so at ctlab.com, and there will be a downloads section on our website where you can download the latest version. It is quite important to have the latest version as we update the firmware of the devices. There's new functionality and stuff being made available. And to be able to use that functionality, you need to be on the latest version of Osprey Lite. So the latest version is currently version 4.0.4. And as I said, you can get that on our website. All right, so the main functionality and functions of Osprey Lite is to configure, firstly, to configure the device. You can then use Osprey Lite to view the real-time data to check if your configuration is correct, and to view your voltage and current waveforms. You can then also download the recorded data from the instrument to your PC, view and analyze the events and trends and waveforms using the graphical viewers that we have available. You'll also have, Osprey Lite will also be able to classify event data according to standards. For example, the EN5160 and NRS 048, which are both available on Osprey Lite. Then using those standards, you can also generate a site assessment report that will compare your power quality with those standards. You also have the functionality to import and export the data in different formats. So that will be in CSV format. You can export it in PQDIF, and we also be able to share that then with colleagues to import it into Osprey Lite for them to view and analyze as well. You can manage the recorded data, so you can delete data that you already have on your system. And then lastly, you can also schedule GPS time synchronized snapshots. And we'll cover all of these functions in a bit more detail with the demonstration later on as well. Okay, with regards to the HMI, so the HMI, some of you may not be familiar with this, this is a new function that we have available on the Vector 3. So there's an onboard web server with an HMI that you can connect to. So you have there's no software requirement to be able to access the HMI. It's available on the Vector 3 with firmware version 6.0.0 and higher. So most of the new devices coming out, or all of them, will be compatible with the HMI. The HMI is by default disabled, and that's for security reasons, so that no one can just connect to your device and be able to configure and make changes to the device. But it's quite easy to enable the HMI. We have a user manual that we can also share with you, same for Osprey Lite, that we will also be able to share with you in the end of the session and with the video for more information on the functions and how to enable it. But just to summarize it quickly, you can enable the HMI by inserting the USB key received with the device into the device USB slot. So with each unit, you'll receive a USB memory stick, and that by plugging that into the device, it will enable the HMI automatically. Just wait about plus minus 30 seconds before you remove the USB from the device. To connect to it, you'll use the default IP address of all of the units, which is 192.168.7.1 on any of your web browsers. So you will just enter the default IP on any web browser. If you're connected to the unit using Ethernet port 2. Now, we've covered the different Ethernet ports that we have in one of our previous sessions. If you've missed any of the previous sessions, you are welcome to request us just to send you the video as well. But just again, the port 2, Ethernet port 2 is the DHCP port on the unit. So port 2's got a built-in DHCP server, and if you connect to it directly using your PC, it will dish out an IP to your laptop, and you'll be able to easily and without issues connect to it without needing to set up any of your IP settings on your laptop. All right, so as I said, it's compatible with most modern browsers, but it was extensively tested using Google Chrome. So we recommend using Google Chrome for the HMI if you have that available. All right, so the main functionality of the HMI is to make it easy for you to configure the device. The HMI was developed as a tool for you to easily be able to configure and set up all communication that is required for the device to work and to record data. You don't need to have software available. You only need to be able to connect to your unit using either Wi-Fi or by using an Ethernet port, Ethernet cable. Then also you can read the real-time view, both as a block or continuously, to make sure that your configuration is correct. And you can also view the status of the device. So that will be to see if you have connection, your communication is set up correctly, what your battery capacity is, what your storage capacity is. All of that you will be able to view on the HMI as well. So the HMI is our recommended method of configuring a device because it's easy and simple to use, and you will have access to it on any of the latest Vector 3 devices. When you set up a device on the HMI and you connect to it later on using Osprey Lite to view the data and to analyze the data, then the measurement point will automatically import into Osprey Lite. So you don't need to worry about reconfiguring the unit. It's already done using the web interface, and you can just use Osprey Lite for your data analysis and to share the data and export the data and so on. All of that is not available on the HMI. So HMI is just a setup and configuration tool. All right, so I would like to head over to Osprey Lite to just, or maybe let's first go to the HMI and just demonstrate that main functionality that we have available there. So I'm going to stop the presentation. I just want to share my screen. Toboho, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Thank you. So as you can see, I've connected to a unit. So this is a fixed IP. In your case, if you're connecting to the unit directly from your laptop on site, you'll be using that default IP, and you'll get more information on that on the user manual. But in this case, I'm connecting via a network to a fixed IP address, which is that. So you can see I'm on Google Chrome, and I've just gone to that IP address. You can log into the web interface using the same username and password. So there's a default username and password. The username is super, and the password is Stellenbosch :7600. All of this is on the user manual as well, so you'll get it from there. Okay, as you can see, I'm logged into the web interface. On here, the first page you'll see is the home page. You'll get some information on the user that's logged in, the serial number of the device that you're logged in, what device it is, on what version it is, and then what was the manufacturing date and calibration date of the devices. You'll also be able to actually download the user manual manuals from the HMI, so you don't need to actually go to the website to do that. Right, so jumping straight over to, I think, the main purpose of using the HMI would be to set up your device and configure your device. So that is done under the measurement point. So you'll see in this example, there's already a meter point that was set up with the name server room. And the supply interface and all of this has already been done. Now, if you need more information on how to do this, that was also covered in the previous session that we had last month, in a bit more detail of how to actually configure and what all these settings mean. But just to show you that you can do this on the HMI, and you don't necessarily need to do it on Osprey Lite, which is also nice about the HMI. You don't need to register the device on your PC. But if you're using Osprey Lite, and we'll get to that when we do the Osprey Lite demonstration, you'll first need to register the unit on your device, and that's also for security reasons. But because you've enabled the HMI using that memory stick already, you don't need to do it again to do the measurement setup. So that makes it very easy to connect to. So that's the measurement point. Once you've set up the measurement point, you're happy with it, you can view the real-time view. As I said, you can do a read or a continuous read. So this will read a block of data, 200 milliseconds, and this will continuously update block information. So it will continuously read. So if I click on that, you'll see it continuously update the real-time values. Now, in this case, it's a single phase recording at measurement points. So in your case, it may look different. And you can just make sure that the voltages and currents that you are recording is correct. And if you're happy, then you can go on. Otherwise, you can go back to measurement point and make changes to your configuration, and then just view the real-time view again. So this is the first view, if I can say view 1. A nice function that we have is view 2, which basically plots your voltage and current waveforms on one graph. And this is quite handy if you unsure of if your phases is correct, and to make sure that, for example, your your red phase current and voltage are in phase and so on, so that you don't, it's not swapped around or anything like that. So it's a nice function. You can also see the vector of the power in here as well. Okay, so that's the real-time view. You also have this on Osprey Lite available. Okay, the status, as I said, will be able to give you some more information on the device. So in this case, you'll be able to see that 10%, for example, of the drive has been used. You can see the temperature, the battery is fully charged. You can see the time source. So this one is connected to the network time protocol. If you have a GPS antenna installed, then your time source will automatically, if you set it up for that, will automatically connect to GPS for the most accurate time. You can view the IP address and then some more information on the right as the Wi-Fi. In this case, the Wi-Fi is disabled. I'll show you now where you can do that. So in this case, there's no information for that. And also the modem is also, this internal modem is also disabled. And you can view the time settings here. So there's PPS, GPS, the different time sources available. Okay, to set up the comms to the unit, that is done under the comms page. So in here you can set a static IP. So this one you can provide it with a static IP. You can enable the modem and set up the APN settings, the watchdog address, and also a new function that we have available is actually to share the network. So if you have multiple devices in a substation, you can connect the modem of one of the devices and then share that to using a LAN Ethernet cable with the other units, so that you don't need to set up the communication and the antenna for each one of them. So this is quite a handy tool. You can also connect to them, so you can set, for example, the modem for one of the devices and then create an access point on that device and then connect all your other devices to that specific one. And then all of them will also have access to internet, and you can remotely communicate to it. So there's also a very handy tool that you have available. In terms of the Wi-Fi, you can use it in two functions. So the first one, as I said, is as an access point. So you will create an access point for this device, give it a name and a passphrase, and you can connect to it. You can connect the other Vector3 devices to it to use the same network, or you can connect your laptop to the device to configure the unit. So if you don't have, but just note that the Wi-Fi is also disabled by default. So you'll in any case first need to connect to it directly using your Ethernet cable and then enable the Wi-Fi afterwards. You can also use it as an infrastructure. So basically to connect this device to a local network, Wi-Fi network that you have available for connectivity through that. So that's the different Wi-Fi settings available. Okay, and then if I just go over here, you can also delete data on the device. You can update the firmware. You can view the logs of the unit, and yeah, and then manage. If I go to manage, this is where you can set further settings. For example, you can provide the time source. So this one is set to automatic, but you can actually select a specific time source. And there's obviously more information on here, more functionality. You can, for example, restart the instrument and so on. So I'm not going to go through each one of them. Maybe one important one will be to enable your SCADA. If you want to use that functionality, you can do it on the web interface as well. All right, so that's the HMI. I'll just minimize this. We can, if there's any questions, we can cover it in the end of the session. Okay, jumping over to Osprey Lite. So you can see I'm currently on the latest version of Osprey Lite, which is version 4.04, build 735. I am connected to a specific unit currently, which with the name server room. But I think I'll just go from top to bottom, go through all the settings, and then we can also take questions at the end. So initially, what you need to do is, if it's the first time you need to set up a unit, is to configure and create a meter point. Now we've created a wizard for you that will make it easy step by step. So if you click on Add New Device, it will take you through a step-by-step process of setting up a device and configuring a unit or the device to record. So the first step would be to register the instrument. So as I mentioned earlier on the HMI, is on Osprey Lite, you will need to first register a key, the device key, to be able to connect to it. And this is also security, for security reasons. So I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, but yeah, so you'll register the instrument. This was also covered in the previous session, so please just refer to that video or slides if you need more information on how to configure it step by step. But the process is basically you register the instrument, you connect to it either directly or if there's a fixed IP on the device, via that. You then set up the configuration. So that would be the meter point information, your interface information. So what's your VT ratio, CT ratio, all of that information, and also what, and from there you can verify that it's set up correctly by viewing the real-time view. If it's not correct, you can optionally edit the configuration again. And then lastly, enable trends and monitors that you want to record. So just for those that don't know, so you can set up different trends. I'll show you an example now for what the device should save. And then also monitors, which is basically thresholds that you set up to trigger waveform recording. For example, if there's a voltage dip, you set up a threshold for when the device should trigger it as a dip and do waveform recording, for example, and then finish at the end. So this is a nice wizard for you to get started and to get the device up and running. You can also, if you don't follow those steps, you can do it by using the menus on the left. It's just not in the correct order. So for example, here you'll have your register instrument function. So you can register the instrument. All right, once you've registered the instrument, you will be able to view the meter on your address book. So under the communication address book will contain the list of all the devices that's been registered on my laptop. So you can see there's a list of devices, and I'm currently one of them are online. So I've connected to a specific device with this fixed IP. If you are connecting to it for the first time and you're connecting to the device directly using an Ethernet cable, you don't need to provide any IP address settings here. That's obviously if you now connect to port 2. So Ethernet port 2, which is the built-in DHCP port. You only need to click on Discover, and it will automatically connect to that device. So you don't need to provide any IP address to it. And then it will show online. Now, in my case, if I go to the meter points tab, you can see that there is a meter point created for this device. So you can see that device with the serial MON467 is connected to a meter point with the name server room. Now, for you, if this is your first time connecting to the device and you haven't set up a measurement point or meter point yet, then you won't have anything, or it won't, that meter won't be connected to a meter point yet. And that would be your next step, is to go to setup and configuration to set up a new meter point. And that is done by clicking on create. But also, again, you can just follow these steps and it will do the same thing. So under configuration, just to show an example of it, this server room was set up. There's the name of the unit, of the meter point, some description, the voltage channels, voltage level, ratio, and then the current channels are enabled, and then also what is the CT ratio, or how are we measuring the current, basically. Also, if you need more on that, that's also covered in previous sessions. Right, so this is the first tab under configuration. The second tab is your trends. This is where you would enable and disable what trends you want to view. By default, we recommend that you only enable 10-minute RMS and trends and harmonics. And you can, for specific short-term investigations, if there's something specifically you want to investigate for a short period, you can enable 1 minute and 3-second trends as well. If you need shorter aggregated trended values, you can do that as well. Just note that your memory will become full quite quickly if you enable 3-second trends as well. So that's why I'm saying only for short-term purposes. All right. Then if we go to monitors, this is where you will enable what monitors you want to trigger. So for example, on this device, we've set up a 3-phase voltage dip and swell monitor. So this will basically trigger a recording when the voltage goes below 90 and above 110% after declared. So why do we have monitors? And this is something that's maybe different to some other manufacturers or suppliers of power quality units out there. We do not continuously record waveforms. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but we've created monitors that you can set up to trigger a waveform recording. If you have a whole day of waveform data, to process that on a PC, to analyze the information, to export that information becomes very difficult. Where if you only do waveform recording when there's something specific that you're interested in, an event or a fault or anything specific, then it makes it a lot easier to analyze the data, to share it, export it, and it's not so computer, excessive on the resources that you need. And that's why there's a lot of monitors that you can use. Now, in the Osprey Lite user manual, there's an explanation of each one of these, so you can read through that if you need more information on what a specific monitor does. But my recommendation would be to not just enable everything. For each one of them, you need to set threshold values. For example, current exceedance, you can set a lower limit and an upper limit. So if the current goes below a certain limit or above a certain limit, you can trigger a waveform recording. Now, if you don't set this up correctly, then there could be a scenario where it continuously trigger, and basically you get continuous waveform recording. And you don't want that again. So if you enable a specific monitor, just know, just bear in mind what threshold you select, as that will obviously play a role on the amount of data that's being captured. And what we've seen in the past, that if you enable everything, what can happen is if it's continuously triggering waveform recording, And when the device is full, so when the storage on the device is full, the unit can't quickly enough delete the old data before new data comes in. And then what will happen is you'll get gaps in your data, firstly, and your SD card can also become corrupt because of the amount of read and write happening to the SD card. And that's why it's important to select appropriate levels or threshold values. If you don't know what value to select, a nice thing that you can do is, for example, let's take the current exceedance as an example again. You can disable any diagnostic data. So this section of the pop-up is where you select what data needs to be recorded when the event is triggered. By default, waveform and 1/6 cycle RMS is enabled. Now, if you're not sure about your limit that you've set, and you don't want to take the chance of storing too much data, you can actually disable waveforms or all diagnostic data. Now, it will still capture the event, and you'll still be able to see that there was an event. And you'll get, for example, the residual voltage and the duration of the event. You'll get that information. You just won't be able to view the RMS voltage and currents or the waveform data. And that's a nice way to see, is this monitor being triggered a lot? Then you know that your limits may not be correct. Then you can update your limits until you're happy with your threshold that you set, and then enable the diagnostic data that you're actually interested in. So that's just a handy tip. All right, so what we also can set up is the hysteresis. So for each one of these monitors, for example, there's a hysteresis value. Now, the hysteresis basically was created so that, let's say, for example, there's a voltage dip that's close to 90% or just below 90%, but during the event, it may go above 90 and then goes below 90% in one of the phases or all three, for example. Now, you don't want that event to trigger multiple times because it's one incident. It's one thing that caused the event. And to basically overcome that, we've created this hysteresis. So, for example, if the voltage goes below 90%, only when it goes above 90.5%, because we set the hysteresis as 0.5%, for a period longer than 20 milliseconds, will it close the event. So, and that is for each one of them. So, for example, current exceedance, if it goes above a certain limit, only when it goes below the, so let's say we set this as 100 or 10 or whatever, only when it goes below that value minus 0.5 amps that we've set here, for longer than 10 milliseconds will it close the event. Okay, so that's what that is. We have 4 values that you can set up to record before an event, during an event, and after the event. So when an event triggers, okay, let me rather say it like this. The device is sampling at 500 kilohertz, but that is with the analog bandwidth of 50 kilohertz. All right. We save that 50 kilohertz sample data in the memory for a certain period of time. So if there's an event that triggers, you can specify a certain pre-duration that you can also store, because it's saved in a storage for a certain period and then later on removed if there was no event. So that's the start pre-duration. So you can see how it led to the event before the fault or event happened. You have your start post-duration. So that's basically the period after the event started that you want to record. So in this case, it's 1 second. Then, as I said earlier, the event will stop when it goes, for for example, in this case, if it was triggered by the upper limit, when it goes below the upper limit minus the 0.5 amps, that will then trigger the stop of the event. And you will then, it will also store 100 milliseconds before that trigger or before that point, and also 100 milliseconds after that stop was triggered, basically. So, and you can change these values. There is a maximum. I'm not 100% sure what the maximum for each one of these is, but if you set it too high, you'll just get an error on that. All right, I think that's the main functions what I wanted to show you. But again, you can get more information in the previous email, previous presentation that we did last month. Okay, so if you set up the device, it's configured, you can view the real-time view on Osprey Lite as well. So again, going to a real-time view, you can read either a continuous read or a block of data. So if I just do a quick read a block, it will just read a block of voltage and current. You can see it's similar to what we've seen on the web interface as well. You also have your view 2, which will plot the two of them on top of each other. And you can also view harmonics for the voltage and for the current. Okay, so that is basically setting up and configuring the unit. Now, there may be some other functions that you also want to set up, and that is done under Manage Instruments. For example, you would maybe want to set a fixed IP address. So that you do on the Manage Instrument, you click on your meter point, and under Ethernet settings, you can actually set a static IP with a net mask, DNS, and gateway for the specific unit. Then there's some miscellaneous settings that you can set up. For example, like the time source that you can specify, a custom server for your network. You can set a password for your Modbus, and so on. So some things that you can do here. And then there's service settings. So by default, only the recording servers are enabled, but you can also enable Modbus, DMP3 with TC IP. You can select serial. Then we have FTP export service, IEC 61850 service, and PTP service. Is some extra services that you can enable. Just quickly with regards to Modbus, there is a default password that's set up for Modbus. You will be able to get that on the SCADA user manual that we have as well. We can share that after the session as well. But you can also disable that password. And you can do that by going to the miscellaneous settings under password. Now, if you want to disable password, you literally just type in disable, all small letters, and that will disable the Modbus password to connect to it. All right. You can, if you don't have a GPS antenna connected to the device, or it's not connected to a network where it can get NTP time, you can actually sync the device time with your laptop. So if you connect it to it directly, you can specify, or you can sync it with your laptop time. So what we'll normally want to do is click on override the current time that it has and just click on sync, and that will override the device time with what your laptop time is. Okay, so you can also, some other control functions such as restart the recording service, restart the instrument, reset the instrument. You can also factory reset it, which will delete all data and all communication, everything on the unit. So basically, yeah, factory reset. And then similarly as on the HMI, you can also view the status of the device. So You can see that the time is valid. You can compare your laptop time, which is this one on the left, with the instrument time. You can see it's valid. It's basically the same. Then you can also see that there is a meter point attached to the device, so it's recording, and there was a meter point set up. The recording subsystem is running. There's no issue with the database of the storage database. The drive usage is 10%, and so on. So you'll get some more information on the status of the specific device. And then there's just other advanced features. Most of these are also on the HMI. All right, and that basically concludes setting up the device and configuring it. At this point, the device should be recording. You can confirm that by just going back to configuration. If you see this record logo or icon, then you know that the device is recording. You can also just check the trends and monitors to see what is currently being recorded. Yeah, you can also look specifically at the device. There's a record LED that will come online if the device is recording. Okay, so at this point, the next step would be to download the data. So after it's been recording for a period, you can download the data from the device. So again, as I said, this is not available on the HMI, as the HMI, the main purpose was basically what we've covered already, was just to set it up and configure it. If you want to analyze the data, share it, export the data, you'll need to use Osprey Lite, or if you are, which we'll cover in the next session, using Osprey PRO, which is our licensed software. But yeah, so to download the data, you would connect to it, or you select the device that's online, and you can then select what data you want to download. So there's two, let's say, you can do a new download or a targeted download. The difference is that for new data, you'll select a specific date, and it will download all data that's new from that date until now. Where targeted data will download data from a certain point of time up to another date, and it will basically override all the data that you already have. As it's not just new data, it downloads everything again. So that's the two different ways that you can download or set it up to download data. You can specify what data types you want to download. So you can select all, or you can just specify to download only events that was triggered with all its diagnostic data, or just trends. So RMS trends, voltage, current, harmonics, and so on. Yeah, so that's data types. Then under options, you can specify if you only want to download 10-minute trends. Now, again, you can enable more than 10-minute trends. You can enable 1 minute and 3-second trends, for example, as well. But if you only want to download the 10-minute trends, you can specify that by clicking on this option. All right, you can then select if you want to download all the trended data, so RMS and harmonic, or just, for example, RMS or just harmonic data, depending on what you want. And then, as I said earlier, select from what date it needs to download. Now, there's also two formats in which data can be downloaded, either using the default format, which will basically, it will download the data and process the data in the same as well. So it will download it, process it, and the data will immediately after that be available to view on Osprey Lite. Now that takes a long period to do because it needs to process the data as well. If you are short of time and you're on site and you only have a few minutes to actually download the data, but you don't need it processed at that specific time. You can process it at the office. Then you can select this complete instrument DB function. So this function will basically download the data in a compressed format, but it won't process it yet. So you need to then later on, at a later stage, import the data so that Osprey Lite can process the data for you in a format that you can analyze and view. So the advantage of this is it's a lot quicker, but the disadvantage of using this function is that during the period that it's downloading, it's not recording. Whereas the default method that will download and process takes longer, but during that period while it's downloading data, it is still recording data. So there won't be a gap in data for an hour or two while it's downloading. Whereas for this function, there will be a gap. So this is a good option, for example, if it's an investigation and you don't necessarily need data after that specific time that you've downloaded, or you don't, 1 hour or two won't make a big difference. But if you are a municipality or utility, then normally you would like to stick to the default so that there's no gaps in your data availability. Yeah, so no gaps in data then. All right, and there's actually a file location that you need to specify of where it will download this compressed file, and that is done under preferences. Under preferences, there's also some other settings that you can set up. This is more related to Osprey Lite and so on, but you can set up the location on your laptop where it needs to store that compressed file so that you at a later stage know where to get that file. So you need to specify this brute force download folder. Again, this is only if you're using this function. Otherwise, you don't need to specify any location. Okay, this bottom part of the screen is where you set up, if you download harmonic data as well, what harmonics you want to download. So it will, by default, download all data or all harmonics, so from 0 to 63, the 63rd harmonic. We've had clients that said that they don't record even harmonics, and that's just because it wasn't downloaded, but it is actually recorded. You just need to download it. So by default, only the odd harmonics are enabled. To change that, you click on change mask, and you can see what harmonics is enabled or what harmonics will be downloaded and what not. And you can move the harmonics over to the left side if you want to enable it by using that function, or you can move all of them over like that. If I do that and I go back to download data, you'll see that all the harmonics are now enabled. That's for harmonics, but you can also enable interharmonics. So there's a tab, interharmonics, that you can also specify if you want to download any of the interharmonic data. Right, once you've done this and you click on download, it will create a task, which you'll be able to see on the tasks. So let's maybe do a quick download just from trains. Let's do trains from yesterday. Select that, trains, and I want to use the normal default data download. If I click on download, it should create a task. It should create a task. I'm not sure why there isn't one. Maybe it's because I'm connected via the VPN. Just try that again. But in your case, there should be a task that shows it's busy downloading. And once that task is removed, you know that it's finished downloading. So that's how you know it's done. Okay, so that's at that point now you have the data on you. If you use the other method of downloading data, so if I just go back here, so use the DB download method, then you need to import the data afterwards. And that is done by going to import. So under manage data, there's an import file or menu, and you then navigate to that specific file, and you can then import the data into Osprey Lite. And then it will only at that point process that data. And that you can do, you don't need to be connected to the device. Okay, what you can also do is do timed recordings. So timed recording is basically you can schedule a specific time and date where you want the device to trigger a timed recording. So if I can just go back to configuration, it's similar as to a monitor. So a monitor is triggered by a threshold. A timed recording is the same thing as this. It will record the same data, but you manually specify when it needs to do a waveform recording. So if you don't want to wait for a specific trigger, you can basically trigger it now to do a waveform recording, and you can select what data you want it to download. You can specify the duration of the recording. Please note just that the maximum duration that you can set is 1 second. Was it 10 seconds? No, it's 1 minute. Sorry, for that confusing. It's 1 minute that you can set. So you can only download or do a waveform recording of 1 minute, but you can do repetitions. So you can do multiple 1 minute waveform recordings, for example. Yeah, and you can schedule a specific time and date. This one will start the recording immediately. If you schedule it at a specific date and time, then it will do the waveform recording at that time. And for example, only for 200 milliseconds, but there will be 2 repetitions of it. And then this timed recording will be saved as an event, but as a timed recording event, where obviously the other events will either be voltage dips or current exceedances, rapid voltage change. This one will have the label timed recording, just so that you know the difference. Okay, you can also delete the data on the meter if you like to clear up space on the device. So that is done under delete meter data. You can either delete all the data, so you delete the actual meter point and all the data, or if you only want to delete the data. So you want to keep the configuration that you've set up this configuration with voltage ratios, CT ratios. You want to keep this, but you want to delete the data that was recorded. Then you select delete all data. But you can also specify a range if you wanted to just delete within a specific range. And then the bottom side, you can delete for all meter points or just for the selected meter points. Okay, and then you click on delete. So I've covered timed recording, real-time view. You can update the firmware. So if we have a latest firmware available, and your firmware may be outdated, there is a possibility that we can share the firmware with you, and then you can upgrade it using the update firmware functionality. Okay, I've covered the manage instrument, also configuration. A nice function that we have available under configuration is to actually save this as a template. So if you need to set up multiple devices, and all of them with the same trends and same monitors, you can save a template. So you can call it whatever you want to, and give it a description, and you can save this template. Okay, and then if you connect it to another device, you can then just load that specific template. So here's a number of templates that's already here. There's the one that I've just created. You can click on it and load it, and it will automatically do all the configuration for you. And you just need to commit to save that settings. So that makes it easier for you to do multiple devices. Just note that you'll still need to provide the meter point information, as the name, description, and so on. It's just for the what you want to record that's being saved. Okay, and that's, you'll see all your templates under the manage templates page. So you can delete templates here, export. So you can actually save, you export this template and share it with someone, and they can import the template in their Osprey Lite and then use that same template. So you can do that as well. You can see there's some default templates already on here. So for example, NRS 048. You can see if you click on a template, you'll be able to view what is saved on this template. So if you load the NRS 048 template, you'll basically enable 10-minute RMS and harmonic recording, and also 3-phase voltage dips and swell. When, for example, the test 1 case that I just saved, you can see that it saved all the other trends and monitors that was also enabled on this specific device. Okay, so that's manage templates. The harmonic download mask is where you select what harmonics you need to download or not download. So it's basically this menu is the same as going to download data and then clicking here on change mask. It's the same thing. Okay, register instrument, which covered in the beginning. So you always need to first register the instrument initially before being able to connect it. It's only required for the first time. You don't need to do it if you connect to it at a later stage again. Okay, we've gone through some of the preferences. You can read more on this if you want more information on the user manual. All right, so I want to get to the manage data section. So on the manage data is where you manage the data that's on your PC. So not on the device, but on your laptop or PC. So you can delete data that's on your PC. So you can see here is all my meter points, and you can delete data for that specific meter point. So that will remove the data on the device, depending on what you select. So you can also, again, delete the meter point. So if I delete this, it will remove this meter point from my list with all of the data. Or you can keep the meter point, but just delete the data, and so on. So that's, that's delete Osprey data. Import data is, as I said earlier, if you use the advanced, this specific download method where you do a complete instrument DB download, then you need to import that file later into Osprey Pro to view the data. You can also export the data that you've already downloaded in different formats. So you can export it as a CSV, XML, PQDIF, or DB format. The DB format is the same format as selecting this advanced feature. So you can download the data and then actually export the data in a DB format and share it with a colleague for them to then import into their Osprey Lite to view the data. So that's the DB format. CSV will just export the data in Excel format for you to view and do post-processing or analysis from there. But note that this will export all the data. So you can't specify to just export trends or certain events. It will export all data. This one will export all data, and this will export all data in a specific range of time that you specified. All right. You can also merge data. Now, let's say, for example, you've created a meter point, and it recorded data for a period, then you've removed that instrument from that meter point and you've accidentally created another meter point. So let's say, for example, the server room, there's now actually a server room 1 and a server room 2, but it's actually the same data. It's the same meter point, location that we download, location where it's downloading or recording. Then you can merge the two into one so that you don't have 2 meter points for the same thing. And you can specify which meter point you want to keep and which one you want to, or what meter point to merge. And you specify that here. Okay. Then if you have all the data on your PC, there's a number of ways that you can analyze and view data. You can view the trends. So again, if you click on trends, you need to click on the meter point that you want to view the data for. And you can then, let's take, for example, this meter point. You can select what data you want to view. So the middle section, or this, is where you select the data you want to view. And the right side is basically the where your graphs will be. So if I just, for example, select, I want to view the RMS voltage for channel 1, 2, and 3, you can see it plots the RMS voltage. Okay. On the top, there's a black bar. Now this, you can move this blue window so that it changes the window that you're looking at, that your graph is looking at. But you can also change the period from and to see if there's data. So if I make this, for example, May last year, you can see there's no data in May until a certain point. So there where that black bar starts, that's where we have data available, or where data was downloaded. And you can move this window and it will automatically update your trend period, so that the time that you're looking at. So you can see this is a longer time. If I zoom in again, it will be a shorter period that we're looking at. Now you can add more graphs. So by doing that, you click on Add Chart, and you can then specify what sort of chart you want to view. So this is a line chart. You can also select a phasor, a spectrum, sorry. And then for both of them, you can specify what trends you want to look at. So again, it's either 10 minutes, or you can set a 3-second if you have 3-second data available, or variable will be your 1-minute data. So if you only have 10 minutes, for example, you can specify 10 minutes, and you can then select what chart you want to view. So if I select the line chart, and I want to use 10-minute data, and I want to plot, for example, the RMS current, then it will plot the RMS current for the same period as for the voltage above. And you can use this cursor on the bottom of the graphs to zoom into specific periods, and it will automatically shift on the other graphs as well. The same on the y-axis, like that. And you can keep on adding more graphs. So you can add a spectrum, for example. So a spectrum, you can see it grays out certain parameters that you can't view as a harmonic spectrum. Here is what you can plot as harmonic spectrum. If we, for example, plot the harmonic current spectrum, then it will plot your current harmonics up to the 63rd harmonic. But now you'll see there's 2 new toolbars, if I can call that, on the top that you can adjust. So the one on the left, the small one here, will adjust the how quick it will step through this data. And this one, you can actually move a cursor around. So you can move to a specific point of time to view the harmonics. So here you can see how the harmonics increased with the current or the load that increased. and then what harmonics, but you can play through it. So now if you click on the play on the top, it will play through the data, and you can make it quicker by just adjusting that slider. And you can view how your harmonics changes in this period that you're viewing. Okay, so that's harmonic spectrum. Now for each one of these graphs, you can actually export it in different formats. So if you click on a specific graph, you can either click here in the middle. This contains the list of all the graphs that you can see on the right side, or you can click on it here. So it highlights the specific graph. You can then save the data. So you can copy the selected chart image to a clipboard. So you can copy and paste it into a Word file. You can save it as a PNG file. So it will save this chart as a PNG. You can copy the data in a clipboard so that you can copy and paste somewhere, or you can save it as a CSV file. So if I, for example, click here and let's just go to desktop, you'll see it creates a CSV format file that's then exported to your desktop. That will only contain the data for this graph. Okay. What more is there to cover? Let's see. So you can enable a toggle. So this is to view values at specific time, to view what the value is. You can toggle graph markers. So this will basically show each sample point. So every 10-minute sample point. You can then see here by using that one. You can also load a template. So let's say, for example, you're doing an investigation and there's certain graphs that you always want to view, or quickly just want to be able to view for a specific meter point. Then you can save this. So all these, let's say you want voltage, current, and harmonics. You can save this template by clicking on Add Template, give it a name. Okay, now that template was created. Now, if I remove all this and I click on Load Template, okay, I've selected, before we do that, here where there's parameters that you select, there's a template tab, and this is the templates that I've saved. Okay, if I select the test 1 template and I click on Load Template, then it will load that template up on the right side. If there's an error, just refresh the data points. Okay, I'm not sure why that is happening. Let's see if I do this. Okay, there's some error with the harmonic spectrum from the template. I'll just take note of that as well. But yeah, this is how you use templates. You can't unfortunately share these templates with a colleague to import. So this will just be for yourself. Okay, what more can we show here? Yeah, I think I've shown everything. So you can remove a chart by either clicking on the X or by clicking on the remove chart there, and then the add chart button to add more graphs. So if you want to add the power, for example, RMS power, you can see the RMS power during the same period. All right, so that's trends. Then events will show all the events that was captured by the recorder. So if I use the same meter point and I select, I'm not going to select a specific time or date from, but you can actually specify from a specific time and then a period of days that you want to view events for, or you can just click on from last event and it will search for the last event. You can see there was no events recorded at this specific meter point. So if I click on search on the top again and I select some other meter point, let's select this one, for example, and I say from last event, select, it will show me all the events that was recorded. If you click on one of them, it will show you the NRS scatter plot and just a summary of what the voltage looks like with the 1/6 cycle data. And you get the residual voltage information here, and you'll see what triggered this event. So here you can see this was a dip. That's, for example, a current exceedance, and so on. If you do a timed recording, then the group will be a timed recording group here. You can also view more information on this by clicking on detail. In detail, it takes you to a similar page as for the trends. And here you can select if you want to view the cycle data, block data, or waveform data. And this is obviously dependent on what you've selected under configuration. So if I go back to configuration and monitor, this depends on what you've specified here. So if you haven't enabled, if you removed waveforms or disabled waveforms, there obviously won't be any waveform data for you to analyze and view. Just want to go back to events. So cycle data will be your 1/6 cycle RMS data. So you can view your RMS voltage. There's the voltage. You can add another chart, line chart, similar as for the trends. And you can add, for example, the RMS current to see what the current did during this period. And if you have waveform data, you can add another line chart, waveform, and you can, for example, select the voltage waveform, and it will show you your voltage waveform for the same period. Again, you can zoom in to a specific window or period that you want to view. The gray line, vertical line, shows when the event started and when the event ended, or when it was triggered as event start and end. And you can see the reason why we have data before and after is because we've set a certain period to store data before and after the event. Okay, that is basically events. You can also store templates again. So similar as for trends, you can create templates to view event data. You can also similarly export it in CSV format or just copy the data. So all the functions that you have available for trends, you also have available for the events if you analyze it with more detail. Okay, then I think we're almost done. You can view some telemetry information such as the temperature. There's a lot more that you can view in terms of telemetry on Osprey PRO, but on Osprey Lite you can view some telemetry of the device. Just note you also need to download the telemetry to be able to view that. That is also done on a download data. So on the right side here on the bottom, there's a download telemetry, which will download the telemetry for the same period that you've selected here. You can view system logs to see if there's any issues or errors or bugs, something with the unit. Something when it shut down or started, booted it back up, you'll be able to view that on the logs. And then I think the last important thing is to actually generate reports. And that is also under reports. You again need to specify what device you want to specify or generate a report for. So let's select that one again. You can select your different classification standard. We only have the NRS 048 and EN 5160 on Osprey Lite, and this is version 2017. On Osprey PRO, we have 2015 and a lot more standards available. And then you can also select the report type, for example, site assessment, and then specify the date to and from which you want to generate that report for. And that will be in default PDF format, but you can generate it as a Word document format if you want to, for example, edit or be able to copy and paste the graphs and the data over to another document. And then click on run and it will create the report. Right, I think that basically covers the most things I wanted to show here. I think the last thing is you can also, you can see it's actually busy downloading data now. So I was just a bit too quick in the beginning. So remember, I downloaded data, I was just too quick. It's actually busy downloading trends. And that number will keep on going down until it's finished. So you can see there's still, what's that, 314,000 trends almost that still needs to be downloaded. And that's obviously because for this specific meter point, we have in 3-second data and 1-minute data enabled. So it's a lot of data that's now being downloaded and not just the 10-minute data. So once this is done, you know that your data is done. You could also cancel by clicking on cancel task on the right side, which I will do now. And then the last thing is you can click on available data. So if you don't know for what periods you've already downloaded data for, you can, for example, select a meter point, give it or select a date. So let's say 1st of May, show availability, and it should show the availability of data. Why this date comes now, just too quick again. So you can see we have for August, September, and October, there's 10-minute data, there's variable data, I think it's 1-minute data what's enabled, and then you also have 10-minute harmonics and 1-minute harmonic trends available in August, September, until October. Okay, I think let's stop at this point, and we can take some questions. Just stop sharing. All right, I haven't obviously followed the chat. Is there anyone with questions?
Hi, there are no questions on the chat. It's just some people maybe requesting this training, the recording. So, but we don't have any questions on the chat. So we can just open the floor for questions, and yeah, we'll take it from there.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, you can just maybe put up your hand. Jaco Creer, I see your hand.
Hi, yes, I just want to know, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. On the configuration of the meter points.
Yes.
There, by where you select the different types of trends you want on the 10-minute intervals. As soon as I use the filter button there at the side, the meter just goes bonkers and records nothing. So why is that button there, and when do you use it?
Okay, let me share my screen and go back to Osprey Lite. Right, so configuration, you're speaking about this filter.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so
as soon as I select stuff there, when I commit it and when I reload the meter point, when I go back, it just trends frequency. It trends nothing else, nothing that I selected. So is that just a remnant of the old Imperiograph software that's left in, or what is the function on that filter?
yeah, the function of this filter was obviously as you wanted to use it as to filter, to only have specific data that you want to filter for. Why it's not working is another question. It could be a bug that needs to be looked at as well, but the functionality is for you to be able to specify for what parameters you want to filter out, or yeah, what parameters you want to view and save if you don't want to store everything.
Okay. Yeah, because we had the situation where as soon as we went into to filter a parameter, you'd select everything, you'd say okay, you'd commit the changes, and then when you reload the meter point and you go back to see what was selected, it just has frequency. It deleted all the other selection points.
But you selected all of these functions except for frequency.
No. I selected frequency as well. I selected all of the boldface ones, and then a couple of other ones as well. And then as soon as I click OK and I commit the changes, and then when I reload the meter point, all of the ticks I made on the whole filter is wiped except the frequency average. That's the only one that remains of everything that I selected.
Okay, and when you download the data, is that data correct? It could
There's
be
no data.
No data.
As soon as I try to download it, just downloads I think the events, the monitors that I set up, and then other than that, it downloads nothing else. There's no voltages, no current, nothing. So we had an instance where we installed a meter point like that, and it was running for 2 weeks, and when we came back, there was no data, nothing. So we wasted 2 weeks for an investigation where nothing happened.
What I need to make sure, which I'm not 100% sure of, is by selecting this, I actually think you basically filtering it out. You're removing it. So if I select RMS, but I just need to clarify this. I haven't really used the filter function a lot, but I think by selecting actually you basically disabling that parameter. And not the other way around.
So it's for disabling parameters. It's not for.
But as I said, I will just need to clarify that, and then I'll get back to you, Jaco.
So if you don't select any filters, it automatically trends everything that's in this list.
Yes.
So there's in essence actually no need for it unless you're going like for clearly just a voltage investigation and you want as much data as possible to minimize the amount of data that's being captured by the Vector 3 to save on storage.
Yes.
Is that basically the main purpose?
Yeah, that would be also a function of why you would want to use that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jaco. Any other questions? I have another hand here.
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Thanks. My question is on how to communicate to the meter using Osprey Lite via the modem. Just cellular communication purely. Let's say your meter is in a remote area where there is only cellular network, so you can only use the modem. Because what I did is I'm able to communicate to it via the HMI when I put the IP address of the SIM card in the browser.
Yes.
But on Osprey Lite, I'm failing to access it.
Did you change the IP address of the device here under the address book?
Yes, I did that. The same IP address that I am able to access the device using the HMI. It's the one that I put there. But when I put it on Osprey Lite, it's not connecting to the device.
Okay. Yeah, so you should be able to connect to it if you obviously know the IP address. Yeah, I'm unsure actually to answer your question. I'm not sure if there's someone maybe on this call that's had this issue or able to communicate remotely to it. Yes, yes.
Worked with the VECTO 3s as well, and I've realized it because I was still running on the older version of Osprey Lite, and then I realized I couldn't even connect to a single VECTO 3, though I could connect to the VECTO 2s because I was still running on the old version. So that might be what the the other guy is experiencing as well.
So you'll be able to, connect to the VECTO 2, but not the VECTO 3.
Yes, but then as soon as I upgraded my Osprey Lite, or I updated it, then I could connect to the VECTO 3 now.
Yeah, that's why we always recommend to upgrade the Osprey Lite to the latest functionality, so that you can, so that could be an issue, as that Brandon mentioned, is check that you've updated to the latest Osprey Lite.
Can I add there? That help button there on the left, what I would do, I used to just click on help, and then at the bottom there's check for an update. So even my previous Osprey Lite, it will say no, there's no updates available. But then, so I assumed that I was on the latest update, just to find that I don't know if there's a bug on this thing as well. But then the latest updates is on the website, on CT Labs website. So I had to download it from there and run the update through that installed file.
Yeah, so it could be a bug, and that's why you always find the latest version on the website. Obviously this is supposed to work. It could be that it's a bug. Obviously I won't find any updates now because I am on the latest version. But for everyone on the call, I will make note of this, but check the website for the latest version. Specifically with the firmware upgrades that's happening on the VECTO 3, you may need to upgrade Osprey Lite to be compatible to some features. For example, like the remote connecting to the cellular, to the modem of a VECTO 3.
Okay, now I'll try the update. I say my version was still 3.80. So I'll update it to the 4.04 and see if it will work.
Okay. My apologies for that.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any other questions?
Okay, the other question I had was on the different modes. Maybe if you can just explain a bit there.
In terms of different modes, sorry, just can you explain that a bit better?
Yeah, the standalone, enterprise, and Osprey Pro account.
On the HMI.
Yeah, even under the, I think, configuration, there's an option where they ask you to choose which mode you want to be on: standalone, enterprise, and Osprey Pro account. Maybe you can just emphasize a bit there, like what that is about.
So if you, just for your interest, if you at any point have unsure about anything, there is a question mark on top of each one of these that you can click on, that will provide you with more information on what does standalone mean, and then what does enterprise and Osprey Pro account means. So you can read more on that, but this is specifically enterprise and Osprey Pro account, is if you want to link the meter to an Osprey Pro account, right? Now, with enterprise, you don't need to specify an Osprey Pro account. If the meter is on Osprey Pro, you've created it, you've specified the IP address, and you then use the server address, which we normally provide. Then the server address is normally ospreypro.com. Then it will link to Osprey Pro automatically. So that's to get communication between the device and Osprey Pro. The difference between these two is just with the Osprey Pro account, you can specify a specific account using the account. There's a key or a number for that specific account. So if you use the Vodacom modems or SIM cards that we provide, that's part of our APN or on our APN, you don't need to specify Osprey PRO account. It will automatically know on what account it is by just setting in the server address information. If you're using your own cellular connectivity or your own modem, or you're using the Wi-Fi, or you're using your local internet, Ethernet network, then you need to not just specify the server address, but also the account that you want to connect, the Osprey PRO account information. And this we can provide you from CT Labs point of view of what the server address is and also what the Osprey PRO account number is. Clients that buy a license from CT Lab with the Vodacom SIM card included, we already configure this for you beforehand. So you don't need to do anything here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that answers my question.
Okay, for a standalone is only, for example, you're not connecting to Osprey PRO, you're not connecting, you're just using it like with Osprey Lite, external software, or offline the Osprey Lite software. So it doesn't need to connect to an Osprey PRO account.
Okay.
Okay, do we have more questions on the HMI? Maybe. Let's see, there was a hand earlier. I can't remember whose hand it was. Okay, Yaku, I see your hand.
Yes, on the report generation.
Yes.
We had a lot of instances where if I run a report for site assessment, if you could run it there at the top, it says the data available. What does those parameters mean?
So that is the same basically as this. To know, so if you're downloading, if you're doing a report, for example, let's take this meter point as an example. If I want to download a report for the December 2021 period, if there's no data available for that report, you can generate a report, but you'll most likely get no information, nothing. Whereas the data available.
It has this, sorry to interrupt. It has this pie chart, and then it says data available, and then there's data not sufficient
missing.
for it to be considered a metering or something like that classification. There's those ones. It's just I'm not sure about those ones because we have the data on the stuff. It just
so you're speaking of physically on the report itself.
Yes, on the report, the data that it's working with.
Okay. So I'll just quickly generate a report so that the rest of can also see what you're speaking of. So you're referring to this pie chart.
Yes. So what is considered flagged data and what is considered missing or interrupted? Okay.
So missing or interrupted data was periods where there's no data available. So for this month, you can see there's no data for 1 August up to 18, 19 August. Then there's also a gap. So that's all referred to as missing data. Flag data, from my understanding of the NRS and standard, is you don't want to include data that's been flagged as an event. So those data are excluded. So a specific 10-minute sample where there was an event or something that was triggered, that's flagged, and you don't want to include that as part of your site assessment.
So, but what impact does this data availability for assessment is invalid for statistical purposes and investigational purposes have to the validity of the account of the report?
Well, this is just so from the NRS, as you read here, there's certain percentages that it says that that it basically proposes or requires it to be enough for statistical purposes or for investigation purposes. Now, obviously, as you want to have that number as high as possible so that you can use the data. But in the end, it's just for you to know, do you have enough data to do appropriate site assessment for that specific point, for example. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we have experts on this call that's working more with the NRS and compliance and so on. If they were able to comment on if it's below 90%, if it's not, then accepted from that point of view. That I can't comment on that, unfortunately.
And then on the previous training, I asked, I think it was Danielle, about this as well, and she said that a majority of the time the missing data or interrupted data is due to load shedding. So will that data missing be prevented if you have the unit on a UPS system, so that the unit will still be able to train even if there's no power? Will that still be counted as valid data? Yeah, it won't be missing.
So I think it's also going to be flagged because it's an interruption period, because during that period of load shedding, and it sends on a UPS and it's seen as an interruption, and it will be flagged. So there will be data, but it will being part of the flagged section of data, and not part of the missing section. If that answers your question, yeah. So for example, let's say there was there was one day where the power was off, but it was on the battery or UPS, and the device kept on recording. You'll still see in the voltage that it was 0 for that period, but it's just going to be flagged, and it's not going to be part of the valid data. Whereas with load shedding, obviously, with load shedding, it's going to be the first part of load shedding will be flagged while the device is still on, and then it's going to switch off, and then it's just going to not have data until it comes back on.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer the question, Yaku?
Yes, that does. It's just that first one that you asked for the experts, but no, I think I have clarity at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yaku. Any other questions? But Yaku, I will find out for you with regards to that specific percentage. I'm not sure how that's enforced, or if it's just a guideline.
Another thing, do you know where you can purchase those NRS standards?
I do not know, no. I'm sure you will be able.
They're not available on the SANS website.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do not know, Yaku. Sorry.
Okay. No, I was just having a dog. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. No, we do have a hand. Yes.
Good morning, Hein and everyone. I have posted the question on the chat, but in any case, I may ask it now. If you go to the to the trends where you do your DIPS windows,
Yes.
Yes, if you can just select one window and probably expand it as you have done it earlier.
So you just want more information on?
Yeah, you can just go to details.
Okay.
Yeah, basically what we do, oftentimes if you can just select circle, oftentimes we, with operations, because at transmission we have most of our protection schemes are using phase 1 relays. So we rely on this to tally the times of the dip it took to the protection, so that we can anticipate how far is the fault from the source, from the substation, from the point where we installed the meter. So
yes.
I've suggested the point as the oftentimes we either if we have an advanced protection schemes, we don't need to do this, but if we have to correlate this with the protection to see if it operated correctly, we need to have a meter point name, the date, time, duration, and the depth of the dip.
Yes.
So our suggesting that if you click the cycle and voltage, you can pick up anyone there.
Yes.
RMS. Normally we have to, you see this, if you from vector graphs, it will give you all these details already. So I was suggesting, is it possible for all this to be also at the top there, be the all this information that I suggested on the chart.
So you want that information here on the top as well?
Yes, even if it could be just there, just below there, where you are showing. Yeah, but something like that.
Is it not, if we go back to events, you can get it from here. Is that not sufficient, the duration and the description?
Yes, I get what you're saying. It's there, but usually when you take off this, it means I still have to do the report and put it up on Word and take off these values manually onto Word documents or something like that. But yeah, it's just a suggestion. But the second question was,
it's a good suggestion. I think we can consider adding it here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. Another question.
The second question is just about the communication. If in some of the subs, if we want to connect our device through the Ethernet system,
yes.
How do one go about it? Because some areas we don't have this wireless communication system.
Yeah, so that is the only thing you need to do is connect the device to, well, first set up the IP address of the unit, which you will do under manage instruments.
Yeah.
And then there's Ethernet settings. Here you need to specify static IP. And this you can get from your IT team. They should be able to provide you with an IP and all the information that you need.
Yeah.
Now, once you've done that, you can then connect the unit to your network via Ethernet cable, but using port 1 of the device.
So we must use port 1 in this instance.
Yes.
Okay, and that would still be I will still be able to see the diagnostics or the status of that IP address on the diagnostics.
Yes, you'll still, if you connect it to the device then via the network, you'll still be able to request instrument status and all the information. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, thanks so much.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? If you maybe can think of questions afterwards, you're more than welcome to send it to us as well. And then we try and get back to your email. So yeah, if there's nothing else, oh, we do have a question. Yes, see there.
All right, thank you, Ayn. It's just a quick one. Is it possible that you're able to, let's say, see the instrument real-time data through the HMI or Osprey Lite, but when you're trying to download the reports, it says there is no data available yet. The instruments had been indicating that it was recording through the LED. Is there maybe some clarity that you can provide on such an event?
Yeah, so remember that you will be able to view a real-time view without recording data, or let's rather say without the device saving the data. So a real-time view is you request for a block of data to be read, and it sends it back to you. But that doesn't mean that there's any data being stored. So you need to still set up the trends and monitors. If I go back to Osprey Lite, you need to have trends enabled and monitors enabled to have data that you can download and have availability. Now, if you just install the device, it hasn't recorded anything yet, and you've only enabled 10-minute trends, then your next 10, you will only have your first data point after 10 minutes because you've enabled 10-minute trends, if that makes sense. So you need to wait a moment before you'll be able to get data that you can download. And it could also be that there was no monitor or no dip or anything happening that you could download at that stage. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I'm well answered. Thank you.
Okay. Brandon?
I just want to find out from you. Is there a way that one can maybe, when looking at events, just select the start and end date, and view all the events for all instruments? Maybe just to see which instrument saw that fault, similar to what one can do on Osprey Pro, where you just select the date and then you can view all the instruments that measured during that time frame. Like not like selecting just a meter point.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but yeah, unfortunately, Osprey Lite, you can't do that.
Yes.
Osprey Lite, you can only individually analyze meter points. So you always need to specify a specific meter point, and then you can view the trends for that specific one. Whereas you mentioned on Osprey Pro, you will be able to view your whole fleet of units on one page with all of the events, and it will also group events that was recorded at the same time into one incident because it was caused by the same thing. So that you can't do in Osprey Lite, unfortunately.
Okay, I understand.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
All right. Danielle, Cecilia, Tebogo, I'm not sure if you have any comments from your side.
No, I'm good on my side. Thank you.
From my side, there's nothing much. I just wanted to make sure that everybody that is in this training, we have their email addresses. I managed to get email addresses from the previous trainings for other people, but I still don't have, I think it's four or five of the attendees where I don't have their email addresses because it's not a lot of them. I can just mention their names so that they can just send us their email addresses for us to be able to send them everything that we need to send them, like the questionnaire and other things. So their names, I've got Dhiren Maharaj, please send us your email address. And Innocent Keswa, please send us your email address. Masilo Mohau, Matlabi Khwadi, and John Regin. if they can just send us their email addresses so that when we send all the information, we can be able to include them in that email. But anyway, so far, there is nothing much from my side. Thank you, Hein.
Thank you, Tebogo. If there's no other questions, I think this then concludes the training session for today. I want to thank you all. Oh, we do have another hand. Yes, Brandon.
I just want to know, I was not aware of this session. I was actually invited via someone in this meeting. Will there be any more sessions on going forward?
Yes, thank you for the question, Brandon. We do have 2 more sessions in May and then in June, which will be in terms or with regards to Osprey Pro. The first session in May will be on Osprey Pro admin users. So we'll cover the functionality and what you as an administrator of an account or as a manager from a high level point of view would like how you can use Osprey Pro and use the functionality. And then the second one would be for standard users, where you are an engineer or you want to do an analysis, and how do you view power quality events? How do you classify, annotate them? How do you view trends, and so on? So that will be covered in the second session then. So please, send out the invitation. I think Tebogo or Daniel will send the invites or the reminders as we get later closer to that date. But yeah, there will be more sessions after that. We also plan to continue with this training. We want to make it a continual thing, and there will be a few interesting topics that we are considering to discuss, specifically with regards to new features that we have available on Osprey Pro, with a lot of nice breakthroughs that we've made and new functionality that we've added that I think most clients are not currently aware of. So that will be covered at a later stage, and the actual training topics will be released in due course.
Just ask that I be included in that distribution list.
Yes.
Or in the invitation.
Thanks, Brandon.
Brandon,
yes.
I'm sending you the invitation right now. So just, you will receive it shortly.
All right. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Pleasure.
Right. Thanks, Brandon, for that. If we do not have any questions left, then thank you again for joining. We will share all the information with you now, all the user manuals. If you have more questions, please send us an email. And then thank you again. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Hein.
Thank you, Hein.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Hein.
Everybody.